Alrighty, so finally gonna do a review on my 1999 Ducati 996. As you can see, I just put some motion lotion in it. I got a little over 4 gallons in it. Sorry for delay on the review if you guys were watching me put this thing back together and wondering, is he ever gonna ride it? Well, yeah, well, restorations are not always what they seem to be and what you plan. You run into various different issues like I have that I'll kind of go over while I go for a ride. So far though, enjoying this bike very, very much. And want to tell you my experience with it. So if you've ever ridden any type of Ducati, they have a certain character about them. Good, bad, indifferent. They are the most characterful bikes you can ever own or ride. And this one is no different. What I find amazing about this, because it's a 99, is the performance of this motorcycle is absolutely awesome, even from modern standards. I've had these bikes before, and it's been a few years since I had the ability to ride one as much as I have been able to ride this one. And the tire technology has jumped up so much, I'd say in the last 10 years, that you could put a really good tire on a bike like this and really exploit it. And I have the S22s. If you're interested in the S22, I think that's a great tire. I think that's probably going to be in between like a Road 5 and an RS10 or RS11. The grip is really good. The feedback is excellent. At this level of power, I took this to the dyno. I made 115 to the wheel and about 70 foot-pounds of torque to the wheel. The S22s are handling this power level no problem whatsoever. So part of the restoration process is that I knew I'd have to do the basic Desmo service and a few other things, like I knew I'd have to replace the filter in the tank and things like that. Well, it was much more involved than that. It required me to go get new hoses, a new fuel pump, a new gasket for the ring for the bottom of the tank. And as I started riding it, I just discovered a lot of other issues. For example, the previous owner spent a lot of money on this bike. I have about $14,000 of receipts from him alone. And he wasn't mechanically inclined, so he paid a lot of money for the shops to work on it. And he went to some really well-known Ducati shops. They did a piss-poor job on maintaining this bike. For example, this has a Yoyodyne slipper clutch, and he paid for the Yoyodyne slipper clutch. But what they gave him was the actual mechanism was Yoyodyne, but the actual clutch plates were not. So they must have got like a Barrett kit, and not only was it a Barrett kit, but also it was missing a metal disc between the two friction surfaces. So the clutch was absolutely awful on this bike. I replaced it with a real Yoyodyne slipper clutch mechanism, and excuse me, always fighting a cold here. And that made the bike so much easier to ride, especially first gear. As you can see, the bike moves. I have a quick shifter installed on the bike. I have the Heel Tech quick shifter. It works great. The one thing I've noticed is that with the Heel Tech quick shifter, because it's a V-twin, and you have a long distance between the firing order, you really want to set it to about 90 milliseconds to make the shift as smooth as possible. It's still plenty fast. It's not as fast as 65 milliseconds, but 90 works really good. It's good for the transmission. It's good for the bike. Seems to run really well. As you can see here, I'm doing 70 miles an hour. I'm at 4,500 RPM. There's no vibration. You can the only way you can see to do in a mirror is by picking up your hand. So these mirrors are not the best, but they're better than no mirrors, and they look pretty good, period correct on the bike. Again, I'm just always blown away. First of all, every time I start it, and it starts because I built this thing. So I'm kind of proud of that. But when I do ride it, I'm just always impressed with it. I think the brakes are really, really good. The suspension's great. I did have the rear shock rebuilt. The front forks so far have done me well, so I haven't bothered going into those just yet. But when I do go get the forks serviced, I'm going to install the Öhlins valving, so I can have better control of the hydraulics. But these have been very good to me. Overall, the bike's been really good, especially after all the money and time I spent and research I spent pouring into this thing. So I feel kind of fortunate that I'm able to enjoy this bike as I am. The really cool thing about this bike, initially when you start going, initial turning is a little heavy, a little slow. It's not a fast reacting initial turning, but once you get it leaned over a little bit, it really dances nicely. So it's, you know, it's got a lot of characteristics like an RSV4 when you're leaned over in a corner. It just grips and goes. Power wise, 115 to the wheel. This is a little bit faster than a 600. It doesn't feel as peaky as a 600 because it's such a torquey engine. And again, it falls. It falls out of steam pretty quickly. As you can see, this thing just glides. Absolutely glides. And the brakes work absolutely great. As you can see, my tack is jumping around a lot. I went online to see what that's about. It could be I just have a loose connection back there, but most likely there's a piece that is soldered that probably needs to be redone inside the tack. So what I might do is try to find a new tack instead of trying to fix this one. But if I can't, I'm probably going to have to try to figure out how to fix that. So this way I know exactly what my shift points are. I know these bikes pretty well, so I got a feeling for them, but ideally I'd really like to know my shift points. And as you can see, the RPM is not a problem when you're just cruising with it. It's a problem when you're really hammering it. So we gotta sort that out. Riding position. I gotta tell you, I'm ridiculously comfortable with this bike. It's very narrow. The handlebars are placed close together. You can't really get a good tuck on this like a modern Superbike. Just doesn't really do that. But it's still a very comfortable bike for me, and I'm like 5'8", about 200 pounds. So this really, really works for me. A lot of people who ride this are always surprised how comfortable it is, especially when they see the seat, and it's just basically like a piece of pleather wrapped around like styrofoam or something. But it's actually extremely comfortable on you, and it really sit into the bike. At this RPM, at 4,500 RPM, you have this little nice characterful vibration. 75 miles an hour, 6 gear, 4,500 RPM, roughly a little bit more. I have this bike geared. It's down 1 and up 7. These bikes were geared extremely tall from the factory, and I think they did that for noise emissions to keep the engine at lower RPM. Literally 6 gear is not you can't even get in 6th gear on a stock gearing bike till you're, well over 70 miles an hour. I'm in 6th gear right now, so this gearing really works for me, even though it's crazy. Down 1 in the front and up 7 in the back. But it really, really works for me. Another thing is that the previous owner had the rear hub and swing arm rebuilt. They did a horrible job. They forgot to put a spacer. I mean, how do you forget to do a spacer? But that's what they did. They forgot to put a spacer in. So I had to redo all that. And while redoing that, I spent the money and I got a really nice hub. I got a really nice quick release sprocket carrier and a new sprocket. All the best stuff that I could find. And it worked out really well. Unfortunately, it was kind of expensive, but it was kind of worth it because the bike is so good. Now, you can see here, I'm at, 80 miles an hour if the speedometer is correct. And I'm just going to punch it. This is 6th gear. As you can see, it's not flying, but it gets up and goes. So if you're on the highway and you're in 6th gear and you just punch it, it's going to go for you. It's not absolutely awesome or anything like that. But here I go. I'm in 3,000 RPM, 55 miles an hour, and it's shaking a little bit. It's not bucking or anything. That's how I know I need to downshift is when it starts to buck. It's just shaking a little bit, and that's a character of the V-twin. The slipper clutch is really good on this bike. It's got so much, this particular bike, being a V-twin, it's got so much, what do they call it? When you get off the gas and it slows up. I forgot what they call it. Anyway, it does come down to speed a lot quicker because of that V-twin drag. But, yeah. I love this bike. I'm not going to lie. You guys seen the kind of bikes I ride and what I have. This is the fastest thing in the world? No. Is it a beautiful motorcycle to ride? Absolutely. Is it an easy motorcycle to ride? Not really. Let me explain to you why. First of all, it doesn't like to go slow at all. The dry clutch in 1st gear is just a real big pain to operate correctly. The other thing too is that it is a bit of a stiff bike. So going over rough pavement, you're all over the place. But when the road is smooth like this, unfortunately, I live in an area where I always got smooth roads. It's not a big deal. Would I ride this bike long distance? Absolutely, I would. I totally would. I just have to figure out a contraption for cruise control so my hand doesn't fall asleep. But yeah, I would totally ride this long distance. As far as reliability is concerned, and if you're looking to pick one of these up, this is a tough one. It's just really the age of the bike. Realize if you're picking one of these up to restore and to ride and enjoy, you're gonna have to replace all the gaskets, and I mean all the gaskets, even around the water jackets that hook up into the cylinders. There's a little ring that needs to be replaced. So it's not super expensive, and the parts are available, but it's a very tedious amount of work. And if you don't know how to do it yourself and you have to pay someone to do it, this could be a very expensive bike for an owner that has to pay a mechanic to do the work. So, if you're very mechanically inclined, you like a project and things like that, God, this is such a great bike. As far as the value of these bikes and where they're going and things like that, they're all over the place. If it's really cheap, you have to wonder how much it's going to take me to get it back together. It's really expensive. Then you got to have to wonder, well, I'm probably going to have to spend a couple $1,000 to get it the way I want it so I can ride it. If you want to ride it, maybe you don't want to ride it. If you don't want to ride it, then you got to look for a specialty version of one of these bikes, SPS, an R, Strada, or earlier 916s. I wanted to ride this bike, so I was kind of targeting a 996.